In this lesson, we will scratch the surface of what is called question answering and conversational AI. Now, as a motivating example, imagine that you're on your way to an important business meeting on the other side of town. To help you prepare, your manager has sent you an email with a document attached. The objective of the meeting is to finalize this document so that it can be shared with the rest of the organization. You've done some editing in the document before, but you have had a busy few days, so you haven't really had the time to check the latest updates. On the way to your meeting, you're not able to open the document and to fully read through the latest updates, but you do have your smartphone equipped with a voice assistant. The voice assistant can help you navigate and understand what is written in the document so that you will arrive prepared at your meeting. You'll probably ask questions such as, does the document already mention the mission of our company? Or summarize what it says about the growth in the last 2 years? And in fact, that's precisely what we found in our recent work called Conversations with Document. And you can find a link to the paper underneath these lessons. Now, this was a good example of automatic question answering. A user posed a question to a system and a voice assistant, in this case, and the system replies with the answer. And note that this does not always have to go via voice. For example, both input and output, so question and answer, can also be written text. Automatic question answering is extremely useful in a wide variety of other scenarios too. For example, at the police, there are often scenarios where a large number of texts need to be investigated. It's extremely useful to have a question answering system that can help you to quickly and intuitively navigate all this information. And probably many of you have interacted with a voice assistant in one way or the other. For example, to turn on some music, switch on your lights, or to quickly check how long one should cook the pasta again. Then you have probably also noticed that there is still a lot of room for improvement. The voice assistant doesn't always properly understand what you ask, acoustically, and if it understood your question, it doesn't always return the correct answer. And it's also hard to have a proper conversation with your voice assistant, where it remembers exactly what you already had asked before. Now, fortunately, the space of question answering and conversational AI is an active research area. And in the next few minutes, we'll have a quick look under the hood of these systems to get an intuitive understanding for how they work. And we'll also look into potential problems with these systems, such as bias, and why it's extremely important to be very cautious when deploying these systems. Before we start, I should say that in these few minutes, we can only possibly scratch the surface of all the methods that are out there. And here I will just present a very common method nowadays for single-turn question answering, which one could see as the start of a conversation. The pipeline starts with a user asking a question. The system then tries to find as many documents and passages in these documents that could possibly contain the answers. All these passages are ranked based on the probability that they contain the correct answer. Now, the best passage is given to a neural network. This neural network selects the answer to the question from the passage and returns it to the user. So let's zoom in on the answer selection part. In a very recent approach, which is based on a model called BERT by Devlin et al., the question and the passage are fed together to the neural network. Now you can see that both the question and the passage are split into tokens, which for now you can think of as words. The neural network is trained to predict for each token whether it's the start or end of the answer span. And then the tokens with the highest probability for start and end mark the start and the end of the final answer span prediction. And we use a very similar approach in the work on conversations with documents, which I mentioned in the beginning. Now we have an intuitive understanding of how these question answering models work, we should also ask ourselves the question what the potential dangers and pitfalls of these models are. And here I would like to specifically focus on bias. There are many forms of bias, of which I will name 3 here. The first one is model bias. And we should ask ourselves the question of how the choice for our model, so BERT in the example that we used here, affects the outcomes of our system. And the second one is data bias. For example, if we train a voice assistant model on only male voices, or only specific accent. The chance is very low that the voice assistant will recognize female voices or voices with an accent that did not occur in the training data. And the third one is societal. This was very well put by Ruha Benjamin in her keynote at the International Conference for Learning Representations in 2020. She said, computational depth without historical and sociological depth is superficial learning. So in other words, we should be aware of how historical and sociological patterns in our society affect the behavior of our machine learning systems. Who is benefiting from these systems and who is being harmed? So to sum up, we have seen that question answering is very useful and powerful in many scenarios. We have also acknowledged that there is still a lot of room for improvement. Unfortunately, many people work on question answering and we see great developments. And last but definitely not least, we should always be aware of bias. So always think twice before you implement a system.